It's time that we push the VA to do the advertising and the outreach that's necessary to reach the people who need it. This amendment is budget neutral, it's vitally needed, and I thank my colleagues for carrying it forward.
Gentleman's time expired. Gentleman from Texas.
Mr. Chairman, I'm pleased at this time to yield such time as you may consume to my colleague from New Jersey, Mr. Runyon.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chairman, for the time. And I thank my colleague from New Jersey, Mr. Holt, for his work on this amendment. Mr. Chair, I rise today in support of the Holt-Runyon amendment, which takes further steps towards keeping veterans alive by dedicating $20 million to suicide prevention outreach within the VA for fiscal year 12. Suicide is always tragic, but suicide by a veteran, especially young veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan, is especially troubling. VA officials tell us that 1 in 5 suicides in America is a veteran, and that the suicide rate of male veterans is twice that of the general population. While most of these are older veterans, young male veterans are still more likely to commit suicide than those who have never served in Iraq or Afghanistan. When the suicide rate of veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan spiked in 2004, Congress responded by increasing VA's budget for mental health by nearly a third. This allowed VA to create the Veterans Crisis Line and place suicide prevention coordinators in every medical center. But if any veteran who needs help cannot get help or does not know it's available, the program is a failure. As I said before, every suicide is tragic and more must be done. This is why I strongly support this amendment, which would give the VA the necessary additional resources to let veterans know through TV and social media to reach out to our veterans. And I hope all of my colleagues will stand with me and my colleague Mr. Holt in support of this amendment, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Georgia is recognized.
Yes. At this time, I'd like to yield a minute and a half to the gentlelady from Wisconsin, Ms. Moore.
Gentlelady from Wisconsin is recognized for 90 seconds.
Thank you so much, gentleman from Georgia. I rise to support this omnibus amendment, and for the purpose of directing the Department of Veterans Affairs to examine its practices on how it plans to rehabilitate and reuse national landmarks that are aging, outdated, or in obsolete conditions within the VA infrastructure, and issue a report to Congress no later than January 1st, 2012, on any actions taken or planned to be taken to rehabilitate and use these national landmarks to fulfill its responsibilities under Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation and to our veterans. An example of these landmarks is the Milwaukee Soldiers' Home, built in 1867, one of the original soldiers' homes established by congressional legislation and approved by President Abraham Lincoln on March 3, 1865. The Soldiers' Home reflects how our 4 sisters chose to care for and honor the soldiers who fought to keep the country united as one nation. I say 4 sisters because it was the ladies of Milwaukee's West Side Soldiers Aid Society whose tenacity and dedication made it possible to raise the funds necessary to create the Milwaukee Home for Disabled Volunteer Soldiers, which they generously gifted to the Soldiers Home system, a forerunner of the Department of Veterans Affairs. This summer, on the 150th anniversary of the Civil War, the Soldiers' Home will hopefully be dedicated as a National Historic Landmark. I urge the Department of Veteran Affairs to send a report to Congress, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentleman from Texas.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, continue to reserve my time.
Gentleman continues to reserve. Gentleman from Georgia.
I'd like to continue to reserve our time. We have one speaker who is on the way to the floor.
The gentleman from Texas gets to filibuster again.
Mr. Chairman, I'm
minutes.
I'll continue to reserve my time. I would note, however, we're pleased to support this amendment. As the gentlewoman has just pointed out, this Veterans Hospital was created, I think she said, March 30th of 1865. That would have been one of the last acts on earth of President Abraham Lincoln. So we're pleased to accept her amendment to ensure the preservation of this very historic and important piece of American history. And I'll reserve our time.
Gentleman from Georgia.
We reserve our time, and we want to commend the gentlelady for her amendment and her compassion in offering it. While I have the time, let me discuss the Altmaier amendment, which has been offered, and Mr. Altmaier, I believe, is on the way to the floor. But this amendment will move $22 million from the Veterans Administration's General Administration account to the Medical and Prosthetic Research account. A recent Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs heard testimony from wounded soldiers about the disparity of prosthetics technologies between the Department of Defense and the veterans' health care. This amendment will restore some of the funding that was cut from the Medical and Prosthetic Research account by taking a small dollar amount from the VA General Administration account. Wounded warriors are deserving of no less than this nation's full commitment, and I rise in strong support of this amendment. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves, and the gentleman from Georgia has 1 minute left. The gentleman from Texas has 2.5 minutes, and the chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas to use his 2.5 minutes as he deems fit.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Chairman, I do support Mr. Altmaier's amendment. Obviously, we're all committed to supporting prosthetics. Support Mr. Altmaier's amendment. Obviously, we're all committed to supporting prosthetics research. Our military doctors have done an extraordinary job of saving the lives of these young men and women who are wounded in combat, and we want to make sure we're giving them all the support they need. And I'm glad Mr. Altmaier has brought this amendment to us, and I'll reserve the balance of my time. I understand he is on his way to the floor because he'd like to speak on his amendment, and I'll reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Georgia.
I'm prepared to yield back the balance of our time.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Texas.
I will yield back at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields back. Is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Texas. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. Hearing all ayes and no noes, the opinion of the chair is the ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise?
Mr. Chairman, in an effort to expedite consideration of this bill and ensure our men and women in uniform get all the help they need as soon as possible, I do move that the committee now rise.
The question is on the motion to rise. All in favor say aye. All those opposed no. The ayes have it. The House now rises.
In order. Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Speaker, the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union, having had under consideration H.R. 2055, directs me to report that it has come to no resolution thereon.
The Chairman of the Committee of the Whole House of the United States of the Whole House on the State of the Union reports that the committee has under consideration H.R. 2055 and has come to no resolution thereon.
The Chair lays before the House the following personal requests.
Leaves of absence requested for Mr. Frelinghuysen of New Jersey for noon today and for tomorrow, and Mr. Cicilline of Rhode Island for today until 3 o'clock p.m.
Without objection, the request is granted. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
To address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, I want to take 1 minute to address tonight an important bill the House passed on Homeland Security, funding all the agencies of Homeland Security. In addition to funding our military, the military construction bill, which we've just done for Veterans Affairs, we also have a fundamental obligation to secure our borders. And the Homeland Security bill that we just passed does that in a number of important ways. Most importantly for the people of Texas, I want to reassure everyone listening tonight that the Texas delegation, this Congress, this majority will not rest until the southern border is secure, until we, with the full support of the people that live along the border, secure the border with zero tolerance using existing law, which means 6 months in jail for crossing the border illegally, as we are doing in Del Rio, with the full support of the local community, arresting everybody that crosses the border and throwing them in jail for up to 6 months, with obvious exception of women and children. But we are enforcing the law in Texas, in Del Rio and in Laredo, with the help of my friend Henry Cuellar and the local community. We are working in this majority to expand that zero tolerance program from Brownsville to San Diego. And I want to thank the Homeland Security Committee, Mr. Adderholt, for allowing us, through language in the bill, to expand rapidly the use of available empty bed space for illegal aliens, so no more police officers like we just lost another police officer in Houston, Texas, to an illegal alien, and we're not going to rest until that border is secure.
Gentleman's time has
Speaker.
expired.
Thank you.
No. For what purpose does the gentleman from South Carolina rise?
Mr. Speaker, I send to the desk a privileged report for the Committee on Rules for filing under the rule.
The clerk will report the title.
Report to accompany House Resolution 294, resolution providing for consideration of the resolution, House Resolution 292, declaring that the President shall not deploy, establish, or maintain the presence of units and members of the United States Armed Forces on the ground in Libya and for other purposes, and providing for consideration of the concurrent resolution, House Concurrent Resolution 51, directing the President, pursuant to Section 5C of the War Powers Resolution, to remove the United States Armed Forces from Libya.
The titles are referred to the House calendar and ordered printed. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 5, 2011, the gentleman from New York, Mr. Tonko, is recognized for 20 minutes as the designee of the Minority Leader. Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I look forward to the next 20 minutes where we can discuss the future of Medicare. It is being addressed in this House during this 112th session of Congress. We have seen many statements made about Medicare in the last weeks. I can tell you a sign like this is greeting many colleagues as they return to their districts every weekend or during the recess that we have, the district work periods that we might have. Signs such as this, hands off my Medicare, greeting us as we return to our districts, and rightfully so. Medicare has been a program that has served our senior population for quite some time. Seniors and those living with disabilities have really found life to be far more doable with Medicare assistance. You know, it was in the 60s when the debate began, and it was President Lyndon Johnson who had been there to sign the measure into law. And at that point in time, our senior population, our senior community across these great United States had a great concern. They were finding it unaffordable and inaccessible to search for health care insurance coverage. And there was cherry picking going on. There were those with pre-existing conditions that were denied any opportunity. And I think it's fair to state that the economic stability of those who had retired, at that point of retirement, they usually found that that stability had dwindled, had gone south, simply because the medical expenses that they required, and oftentimes with underinsurance or no insurance as a scenario, they were seeing their lifetime worth of savings dwindle because of that dynamic in their lives. Now, in this 4.5-decade stretch forward, many have suggested that their economic consequences have stayed fairly stable, that they've enjoyed a better retirement because of the addition of Medicare to their outcome. However, this Medicare program has been under attack. It's been under attack. There's been a Republican budget that has come forth and been produced in this House by the majority party, and they have voted on that measure to end Medicare. End Medicare that would shift risk from government to the pockets of seniors in this country. It would take a given situation where they would be asked to shop. Shop in the private sector. This could be a 70-year-old, it could be an 80, 85-year-old that might be asked to shop in that private sector market. Well, the egregious notion is that the value of that coupon they're given to go shop for new insurance holds a value of about 32 cents for every $1 of premium that would be paid on insurance costs. That means that they are tremendously drained economically. It means that $6,000 more would come out of the pockets of our senior citizens individually for the cost of this insurance coverage. Well, that is an unacceptable outcome. It's one that really makes it difficult for our senior community to be covered for health care purposes and to remain somewhat economically stable in their retirement years. And by the year 2030, it's suggested that the costs would triple for our seniors. By the year 2022, it would at least double. These are frightening statistics. These are unacceptable notions for our senior community, all of whom need to be responded to with respect and sensitivity and with utmost compassion. This does not show compassion. This shows disinterest. It shows an insensitivity to the struggle that many would make, and the correlation of the need for health care services with age as a factor is an understandable partnership. It's one that would mimic and trace each other's curves because as you grow older, the propensity to require services of health care delivery would naturally grow. And so we do not want to put at risk our senior population. Now, I think what is quite interesting is that as we talk about the doubling and the tripling to seniors for this program, just recently a study came out that said that those who are of age 55 today should have to save about $185,000, $182,000 additional for their medical expenses without the efforts made by Medicare as it exists today. And then the numbers simply escalate. I believe it's into the $400,000 realm if you're in your 30s. So this is going to put a huge hardship onto our American working families, onto our senior community of today and certainly of tomorrow. Now, what I found most generous is the statements made by seniors who are eligible for Medicare today, speaking in a way that is not self-centered, but really speaks to the future. And they have said that they have enjoyed Medicare as a program. It has provided economic stability, it has provided health care, quality of services, and they want that to be preserved for the next generation and the generation to follow. They want their children and grandchildren to enjoy the same order of benefits that they have enjoyed. So while there might have been this idea that if we safety net somehow a certain given population currently enjoying Medicare and suggest that most of that could maybe be kept intact, well, our seniors showed that they're not, that there was a far broader sense of concern expressed by our senior community. It was not a selfish order of self-centered reflection that some might have anticipated, but rather the seniors showed that they're truly concerned about generations to come, which I think is a magnanimous statement for our senior population in this country. When it comes to messaging, it's important, I think, to note, to take lessons from the most recent congressional district election that was held just about a week ago. Last week, the voters of the 26th congressional district in the state of New York, in a rather Republican area, in fact, the 9th most difficult district in this nation for a Democrat to win in. And it was there that a Democrat by the name of Kathy Hochul was running, and she was successful in that she was able to bring to the attention of the electorate in that district the facts as to the Republican plan, the Republican budget. And it was more than just Medicare. She talked about the end of Medicare, but then related it to the dollars, the savings accrued from that elimination going toward other spending. And just what was and what is that other spending proposed? And it would be handouts, mindless handouts, to the oil industry, sitting on a profit-rich situation, perhaps the most profitable situation that they have known in their history. And to date, this calendar year, the industry is sitting on a $36 billion profit margin. $36 billion. And what they're asking here is that some $44 billion worth of handouts, mindless handouts that have continued through the decades, nearly a century now, be continued. And how do we pay for that? But by ending Medicare. Ending Medicare to take care of the profit-rich oil industry. The same is true of millionaire, billionaire tax cuts. You see, the savings that can accrue by ending Medicare would then be slid over to provide for millionaire and billionaire tax cuts. Well, you know, middle-class America is not ready for that sort of assault. They're going to let their feelings be known. And it's why messages like this, hands off my Medicare, are greeting myself and colleagues across this country who are concerned. They're concerned. They're letting their legislators know that this is not an acceptable thing to do. Now look at the track record where with Medicare we have avoided administrative costs to the nth degree. We have avoided marketing budgets. We have avoided all sorts of external costs that don't go to the health care delivery of patients, but rather are the externals. Those dollars have kept down, avoiding those dollars has kept down the price tag on Medicare. When we look at that same stretch from the beginning of Medicare to today, it's been in excess of 5,000% increase in premiums that have risen from that point in '65 to today. So it tells us one thing. It tells us that there is this tremendous growth from the private sector in comparison to what the Medicare track record has been. And we have spent time with the Affordable Care Act to strengthen Medicare. We have made certain that where there were overpayments to the insurance industry for certain services, those dollars were reduced. We made a major effort to go after fraud and abuse and inefficiency. That strengthens the program. We provide for more dollars for primary care physicians who can be networked into the Medicare formula so that we can provide contact for administering the services. All of this as a growth factor so as to strengthen the Medicare concept as we know it. But people are concerned. Their health care situation has been addressed in very magnanimous terms by the Medicare program. People fought for years to get this developed, and they have maintained and strengthened it over the decades. And for people to come in and assume that they are going to end a Medicare program simply to pay for oil handouts and millionaire and billionaire tax cuts is just not going to be well received by America's working families, by her middle class, that has seen this assault where it's their turn now to get better treatment, not worsened treatment from the halls of government here in Washington. The Medicare situation is one that has really defined a stronger sense of quality of life for our senior community. It has enabled them to have good coverage. What we also did in the Affordable Care Act is begin to close, and will close completely by the year 2020, the donut hole that existed for pharmaceutical purposes for those on Medicare Part D. Well, again, we saw what happened, that we needed to come forward with an improvement, a program that would assist people, and so we closed that donut hole. Eventually, I can tell you of so many seniors who have approached my office, who have seen me in the district, telling me of how difficult it is for them to absorb the donut hole concept. With any few months, within any given calendar year, they fall into the donut hole where they need to dig into their own pocket to pay for the cost of many pharmaceutical requirements that they have in their medical agenda to stay well or to be healed. And so it's a very pricey situation for them, and we want to make certain that those improvements stay intact. We have also removed co-payments and deductibles for the annual checkups and for various medical screenings that are available to our senior population. These are the sorts of responses that are compassionate, that are speaking to the quality of services and certainly to the dignity factor for our senior population. These are improvements. These are ways to stretch the budget and enable our senior community to be all the more intact and connected with community. And it's while we had worked with the Medicare issue in the Affordable Care Act, we wanted to make certain we also strengthened the trust fund. So there are things that have been done along the way, and now to just come in and say, look, this is more business for the private sector. This is a way to drive all the accounts of individuals who are enjoying a Medicare program, a concept that has worked well for 4.5 decades, is now deemed to be ended simply now because of the desire of those who are in the majority in this House to pay for benefits to the oil industry and to continue millionaire and billionaire tax cuts. You know, just on the heels of this victory in a congressional district I mentioned earlier, in the 26th district in New York, just on the heels of that victory, we took yet another vote in this House to deem the Republican budget a budget from which will work. That includes the end to Medicare. So just this week, another vote right in the shadows of that victorious Democratic win in the 26th congressional district in New York. We are again at it, putting a close to the Medicare concept in this country. Unacceptable outcomes. People will not tolerate that outcome. In a CNN poll of recent measurement, there was a huge response to the negative, to the Republican plan. 74% of Americans saying, leave the Medicare situation alone or improve it. Build upon it, strengthen it, prepare it to have even stronger values and concept, and to also provide for the trust fund that will be all the more secure, to give it the stability, the underpinnings of support, not to end it. People have seen what it meant to them. They've seen what it meant to be able to enjoy the economic relief that is so important, especially as we age as a population. The life expectancy growing higher with time is an important factor that really responds to the need for Medicare as a model, as a concept in this nation. You know, there are many who have been speaking out against this proposal. There are many who understand that it's provided a great deal of stability. It has provided families, working families, with the relief knowing that their senior members of their family are in good hands with a Medicare program that enables them to have more independence, to have more preventative services, to have more acute care delivery with an affordable outcome for their given family situation. This is an important measurement that needs to be kept in mind. It's an important effort to keep our economic situation in this country all the more doable and all the more viable. There's an opportunity for many seniors to be involved, invested in community. Medicare enables them to be that more vibrant citizen, to respond to the economy in positive, contributory terms, and I think that that is very important. You know, with the Medicare situation in this country, we have watched the quality of life of our senior population grow and grow exponentially. And for those forces to come here before this House to express this desire to end a concept for which people fought for many years, where there was a documented need for this sort of advice and this sort of concept, and now to watch it at risk, where it could fold and not continue, where we could have a situation where the concept is ended, is unacceptable. You know, there are those in selling this package that they would suggest that the legislators here in Washington have the same sort of opportunity. It's akin to what we're offering the senior community. Nothing could be farther from the truth. On average, the benefit for a congressional representative is about 72 cents on the dollar, meaning that any 28 cents, every 28 cents worth of coverage would be absorbed by the individual legislator. For the senior population, we're looking at 32 cents, a 40-cent difference, meaning that the gross majority of that premium would be paid for by senior citizens. That is where the economic consequences become very, very real. That is where the shifting of risk from government to the senior citizen, it would be a real dynamic. It would be an unbelievable, painful outcome for those who perhaps would struggle to find insurance. We would be asking people to shop in a marketplace, asking them to deal with a profit-rich industry, to deal with situations that might return cherry picking and that might return inaccessible, unaffordable notions when it comes to health care coverage. We saw it, we've seen it repeatedly. We know that there were populations that were underserved as we began the debate on affordable care that was completed in the 111th session of Congress, and we certainly don't want that to come back and be the issue for the most senior elements in our society again. This was a victory that was hard fought. It's been a concept that has been only strengthened through the years, and like any good program, it gets adjusted as we move with time. Fix Medicare is the message. Strengthen Medicare is the appeal, not end it. And the advice for those who want to end it is very basic. Hands off my Medicare. It's the advice that's given. It's the chant that's repeated over and over again across this nation and has been such for quite some time. This is part of a plan that the Republican budget introduced by the Budget Committee in this House has dubbed itself as a path to prosperity. My friends, it is so obvious that this is the road to ruin, not the path to prosperity. You are taking the vulnerable. You're taking the vulnerable and making them pay more. This is about tough choices. We've seen where people don't have insurance, they have to make tough choices. There is nothing tough. People have said, oh, this is a tough choice that people have made. They've gone forward and taken a situation that they think is not affordable, and they're going to make a tough choice and remove it. There's nothing tough about asking the weak or the poorer to pay more so that oil as an industry can get more benefits and millionaires and billionaires can draw down a larger tax cut. There's nothing tough about that. What it is insensitive, it's un-American, it's immoral to have such an outcome after so much success with a program that has proven itself time and time again to be a great friend to the senior community. There are those who spent countless hours, countless efforts to put together a plan that would respond to this nation's seniors with respect and dignity. And we can simply not afford to walk away from this concept in a very callous manner that we're asked to. And I was proud when I saw so many people stand up and say no to this vote. Unfortunately, it passed in the House. And if this budget had its way to the finish line, it would end Medicare at the expense of so many of our nation's seniors. They have enjoyed this benefit. They have prospered from this benefit. They have realized a great sense of dignity with this effort, and we must maintain it. We must continue the fight to preserve a program that has served this nation very well. With that, Mr. Speaker, I will offer back the remaining portion of my time, and thank you for the opportunity here this evening. I yield back, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman yields back. Pursuant to the Speaker's announced policy of January 8, 2011, the Chair recognizes the gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Richmond, for 30 minutes. This is cruel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for recognizing me and presiding over these affairs tonight. I will yield 5 minutes to my colleagues. Really, I will yield as much time as he may consume.
Forward to hearing. And earlier this afternoon and into the evening, this House considered an appropriations bill related to the Veterans Affairs and military construction. And at that point, I asked my colleagues to support an amendment that I offered for the FY 2012 Military Construction Veterans Affairs Appropriations Bill. And that amendment, I'm thankful to say, was accepted. It was bipartisan acceptance. Both the majority and minority agreed that it should be added to the bill. And I just wanted to tell the gentleman and my colleagues that that amendment is very straightforward.
It moves $22 million from the VA General Administration to solve a dramatic cut in medical and prosthetic research. And this bill that we're talking about, the VA military construction account, was written, as it was written, it funds medical and prosthetic research at $509 million in FY 2012, but that's a $72 million cut over last year. But the amendment that I offered restores funding to an account that directly impacts treatment of amputees and other wounded veterans. And like all of my colleagues, I want to do everything I possibly can to support our veterans and to promote these programs. And like many of us, I have visited the facilities for amputees at Walter Reed Army Medical Center right here in Washington. And I've spoken with those disabled wounded warriors who have lost limbs in the line of duty. Through technological and medical improvements at that facility, the DoD has demonstrated its ability to improve world-class health care to amputees and other wounded service members. The VA must have the funding necessary to carry on that mission after veterans leave for service. Just last week, the Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs held a hearing entitled Seamless Transition, Meeting the Needs of Service Members and Veterans. During the hearing, multiple wounded warriors testified about the difficulty of transferring between DoD and VA care. In particular, one witness, Lance Corporal Tim Horton from Oklahoma, highlighted the disparity between health care he received as he sought out prosthetics that help him go about his everyday life. Lance Corporal Horton said, "I know other veterans who live in close proximity to Walter Reed who are able to walk in and out with the services and equipment they need within the same day, all without ever needing to go through their local VA. While waiting weeks for an appointment might seem like a minor inconvenience," Lance Corporal Horton said, "for a warrior like myself, spending weeks without necessary prosthetics equipment or sometimes even worse equipment that causes extreme discomfort and other medical issues can be wholly disruptive to our daily lives. The timeliness and consistency of care should not be a function of where warriors happen to live." Now, I've spoken with amputees with similar stories from my district in western Pennsylvania who have expressed their dissatisfaction with the medical care they receive after retiring from the military. And I'm sure all my colleagues would agree. We can never repay America's veterans for the sacrifice that they've made for our country. What amount of money could replace an arm or a leg lost in the line of duty? I firmly believe, as I'm sure we all believe, that we need to get our fiscal house in order, but in this extreme time of fiscal restraint and prioritization of appropriations, I believe that no one should stand ahead of our nation's veterans when making these difficult funding decisions. I believe that medical and prosthetic research is a higher priority than bureaucratic administration. CBO has scored my amendment as having no impact on budget authority, and it would actually reduce FY 2012 outlays by $5 million. This amendment helps direct the priorities of the VA toward the veterans that deserve its funding and support, and I want to thank the American Legion for its support in helping craft this amendment because it's good for veterans, and I am so happy that my colleagues have agreed to accept this amendment as part of the bill. Hopefully it will survive in the Senate and become law, and I greatly appreciate the gentleman from Louisiana yielding me some time to allow me to discuss that. And I would yield back to my good friend, Mr. Richmond from Louisiana.
Thank you so much. Mr. Speaker, several weeks ago I had the opportunity to come down to the floor of the House and start something that I think is very significant. And that, Mr. Speaker, I can't directly talk to the American people, and I have to address you, but if I could talk to the American people, I would remind them that a couple weeks ago when I came down here, I was inviting them to participate in what I am now calling the People's House so that ordinary people can have a say in what we do and make sure that their opinions are heard. So again, I would invite anyone and everyone to join me in this conversation to make sure that everyday people have a voice and have a way to contact me. So again, you can reach me at myidea@mail.house.gov, or you can find me on Facebook, or you can find me on Twitter. And what I want to remind everyone of is the fact that it's very clear that many of us know a lot of things, but the most important thing we need to know is that we don't know it all. And that's why I'm soliciting, Mr. Speaker, the help of the American people so that they can give us their ideas. And when I started this the last time, I was asking them to send me their ideas on ways to cut spending, ways to save money. I also was asking them for ideas on how to raise some revenue, how to make this country the great country that it used to be. Well, the good thing, Mr. Speaker, is that we had people to take me up on this idea and to say that they thought this was a good idea and that they wanted to participate. They wanted to make sure that people heard their voice, and they sent me a number of ideas, and we're going to talk about some of those ideas and those comments today. So my goal here is to, again, have and initiate a conversation with the American people, because this is truly the people's house. The United States House of Representatives, you cannot be appointed to it. You have to be elected. And the history behind it is because we are the closest to the American people. So now in this day of new technology and all of the outlets and social media that we have in order to strike up conversations in different ways, we should do that. This is not the day when the only thing we had was the United States Postal Service, or we had slower means of communication. Today we can communicate in seconds, if not nanoseconds. So I want to make sure that we use all of this new medium to make sure that we expand this conversation to everyone who's concerned. So these are some of the people who responded last week, and some of the people we will talk about their ideas. And Mr. Speaker, I was very happy to get such a large response, but these are some of the people I wanted to point out. We had Sheila Baker, who responded, Robert Becker from New Orleans, who also responded, Marianne Lawrence Kazuban responded several times through several different media outlets and had some very interesting things to say, as well as Micah Hill, Barbara Olinger from Folsom, Louisiana, Freddie Vasquez, Jr. And through Facebook, we had Adam Haney, Anthony Sadler from Tennessee, Phil Schittler, and Dolores Wilson, all who participated and gave me some of their thoughts about what they thought should be going on. So I want to make sure that at least the people back in the 2nd Congressional District in Louisiana understand that they are more than welcome to participate in this conversation, but this conversation is open to the American people. There's no monopoly on good ideas, although I respect and I value the opinions of the people from Louisiana and the 2nd Congressional District. We want to hear from everybody. So let's just start talking about some of the ideas, and I will tell you before I start that I may or may not agree with all of the ideas, and some of my colleagues from the Republican side or the Democratic side may or may not agree. But the one thing I think both sides will agree on is that this is America, and this is what makes America the great place that it is. This is the place where we can provide kids with a free, quality public education, which will prepare them for the future. This is a place where we strive to get the sick health care that they need, even if they can't afford it. This is the great country where we take care of our seniors and our disabled with Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. This is the country where we care for our fellow man and strive to feed the hungry, clothe the naked, and shelter the homeless. Tonight I'm sharing recommendations on how we as Americans get back to that great place of humanity, of sacrifice, and of prosperity. Now, Micah Hill, Micah's comments were very, very interesting. And Micah's frustration was the fact that Congress should address underachievement in our grade schools. And he wanted us to address that underachievement by holding parents accountable for their children's performance. And I'll give you an excerpt from his letter. Micah's response was, children that are not doing well in their studies or children that are constantly in trouble, their parents should be investigated. The students' home should be investigated to see if the parents are abusing substances or anything else. If young students, like grade school, freshmen in high school, are having problems, then the parents should be investigated. That will help educate our children that are not getting their educational needs because of their home front. Find out the child's educational strengths and find out what's lacking in the home. Now, Michael, that is a very creative idea, and I think that that conversation has started numerous times back in my state legislature. It's a conversation that we should be having on a federal level, because when we talk about our children's success and we talk about their education, the one thing that everyone agrees on is the fact that parental responsibility and parental involvement is the single biggest indicator in that child's success. So we as government, if we can help to do anything to make sure that that home life is safe and secure and that child can succeed, we absolutely should do it, and I look forward to continuing that conversation with you. Now, I'll touch for a second on Marianne Lawrence Casaubon, who, by the way, is 72 and she's a retired teacher. But she says before her teaching career, she worked more than the required quarters in order to draw Social Security. So between the two lives that she lived and the two jobs that she worked, she now lives on less than $1,150 per month. And she says that if there was a flat tax of 10%, of only 10%, it would cost her roughly $115 per month. And she says even though she has to spend every dime of her check every month, she would just have to do that. And she also mentioned that some months she has to go without food, but she always makes sure that she gets her medicine for her heart and her osteoporosis. That's the type of sacrifice, that's the type of predicament a lot of our families in. But she went further on, Ms. Marianne went further to say that as she talked about tax and fiscal issues, she was very clear to write this, and it's a statement that I absolutely agree with. She said, Congressman, I hope you appreciate the fact that many of your constituents do support limited government and fiscal sanity. Our country is in a real danger of economic collapse. Please don't just toe the party line and reject solutions to this crucial issue. Our nation's fate depends on it. Well, I want to say, Mr. Speaker, that I think Ms. Marianne is absolutely right. I think that everyone in the country is calling for a limited government and fiscal sanity. Also, I think that we have to recognize at the same time that as we cut and make very prudent decisions to restore our fiscal sanity, that we have to invest in this next generation. We have to invest in the future. We have to invest in those things that spur our entrepreneurial spirit, our innovation, and that are going to continue to make sure that we're the leader in every industry, in every category that we used to be the leader in. But after Ms. Marianne talked about the limited government fiscal sanity, she also volunteered that she would like to see an indexed income tax without any exceptions for individuals or families, and no incentives or exemptions to any industry, company, large or small. So here's the recommendation that Ms. Marianne came up with. She would recommend a 0% tax for anyone with income less than $20,000, 5% with anyone with income from $20,000 to $40,000, 10% for any of those from $40,000 to $60,000, 15% for those from $60,000 to $80,000, 20% for those from $80,000 to $100,000, 25% for those from $100,000 to $150,000, 30% for those from $150,000 to $200,000, and 35% for all incomes over $200,000. And I think, Mr. Speaker, that this is very interesting because we're talking about a 72-year-old lady who survives on $1,150 per month. And she's taking the time not only to watch C-SPAN, but to join the conversation with me and the People's House to say that she understands that people who make more should pay a little bit more. And on that note, I'll go to Sheila Baker, who I think her quote is directly applicable to what Ms. Marianne was saying. And Ms. Baker said that I pay my taxes responsibly, with the understanding that I must pay more than those who earn an income less than mine. So Ms. Baker is clearly saying that she makes a little bit and she understands that she pays more than the person who does not make what she makes and is not as fortunate as she is. But her next sentence is the most important one. She says she also expects and demands that those who earn more than her should do the same. So that those who make more than Ms. Baker should also pay their fair share, and she says, hence the concept, a fair shared burden of taxes. So I want to thank Ms. Baker, one, for acknowledging that she's doing better than other people and she has to pay a little bit more, and thank her for participating in the People's House and expressing her concerns and her opinion about where she thinks we should be as a country. The next person I want to talk about, Mr. Speaker, is Freddie Vasquez, Jr., and he has concerns about our spending. He has concerns about foreign aid, and he has concerns about the war that we're fighting. And he writes, we spend billions on helping others, and that's fine when we have the means. Libya, Pakistan, Iraq, and Afghanistan. They take our money, then they stab us in the back. America can and will go bankrupt. Our government is acting like a teenager who just received a credit card. He then goes on to quote Tupac, where Tupac said, they got the money for war, but they can't feed the poor. And he closes with, that's not right, that's not America. And I would just say that the frustration that Mr. Vasquez is expressing here is a frustration that we're hearing all across the country. The fact that we're fighting so many wars on foreign soil, the fact that our humanity goes far out immediately. People are wondering, does humanity start at home? Do we have obligations to take care of on the home front before we go across the globe doing the same? Mr. Speaker, I would just chime in here and add my personal opinion that we're America. We can do both. We can provide here at home, and we can continue to be the world leader, spread democracy around this world to make sure that the world is just as great as the free country that we live in. Now, what is it going to take to do that? It's going to take a shared sacrifice. In the last People's House, we talked about that the American people give what you can give. If you're a high school student, mentor an elementary school kid. If you're a college student, help out at a senior citizen home. If you're a millionaire, then contribute to a charity. What makes America great is the fact that we are willing to give what we have to give. So I would just implore on everyone, again, Mr. Speaker, to give what it is you have the ability to give, because that's what made this country what it is today and allowed us to achieve what we were able to achieve. Mr. Speaker, I'll also add that Anthony Sadler, he wrote in to say that he believes we should buy more products from local businesses, especially minority businesses. Anthony, I just want you to know that down here today I don't have our minority whip, Mr. Steny Hoyer, but I will tell you that you and Steny Hoyer are a match made in heaven. Steny and our Democratic caucus is pushing what we call Make It in America, and if Steny was down here today, he would go on and really get excited about the fact that we will make it in America. That's what we do. We make it in everything we do. And the other part of that Make It in America, we need to make more products in America. That's what we do. We manufacture things, we build things, we have the best innovation, but we need to make sure that we have a focus, a commitment, and an investment in the American people so that they can make it here in America. So that goes right with what you're saying, Mr. Vasquez, because as Steny will push that we make it in America, you're pushing that we buy American products, and those two things go hand in hand. So, Mr. Vasquez, I just want to thank you for chiming in, and I'm sure that my minority whip, Steny Hoyer, is somewhere right now very appreciative of the fact that you also recognize the importance of making it in America. I'm sorry, that was Anthony Sadler. Now we have Ms. Dolores Wilson and Phil Schittler, who posted on my Facebook. And both of them didn't post very long messages. They both posted the same thing at different times, and they simply said that they agree with the President's rationale not to release the pictures of Osama bin Laden's body. And I just want to say to Ms. Wilson and to Phil that I agree with both of you. I think the President made the right decision. But it's very comforting to know that we have citizens like you all that are at home paying attention and simply are not voicing an opinion to get attention, but simply a heartfelt belief. And it just so happens that I agree with your opinion. But even when we don't agree, I want to hear from you. I want to make sure that we keep this conversation going. Now, the next person is Adam Haney, who I did not know before the first time I did the People's House. But he was watching, and this is what he wrote. Saw you on C-SPAN. Good job. Those maniacal Republicans want to kill my hopes for class mobility. Save the safety nets Republicans use to get into Congress for those of us who want to benefit from those same programs that they did. And I would just add, Adam, that, you know, there are a bunch of programs out there, and those programs are what makes this country great. And I don't have to talk about the obvious, Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare. We can talk about Head Start. That gives our toddlers the ability to start school and give them a head start on their future. Well, as a country, and we invest in things, we should look at what return do we get on our dollar. When we invest in early childhood education, we get a 9-to-1 return. For every dollar that we invest in that child, we get $9 back. And those are the types of programs that Adam is referring to when he said that the majority now would prefer to cut all of those programs now that they have received it and they've been the beneficiary of it. We can go back to free and reduced lunch in our public schools. We can talk about public school education, period. The fact that many of us that are lucky enough and honored enough to be members of the United States Congress in this 112th Congress came from public schools with public school teachers funded by the American people. We should hold that very high, the privilege that we were able to do that, but at the same time we should recognize that that was a sacrifice by generations before us to make sure that it was fully funded. We had the quality teachers that we needed so that we could be prepared, so that we could prosper, and that we could be successful. It would be a sin and shameful for us not to invest that same energy, same money, same commitment into our next generation, and I'm afraid that that's the route that we're taking. So, Adam, I just want to say I agree with you wholeheartedly. The last one, the second to last one is Robert Becker from New Orleans, who wrote me with an idea about Social Security and retirement security. He said we should increase the amount that is deducted from paychecks to pay into the trust fund and increase the amount employers contribute to the fund. It is in America's best interest not to have a great portion of elderly Americans living on the edge of poverty. Not only is it in America's interest, Robert, I will tell you it's the right thing to do. And at some point we have to remember that while we're here on earth, it's for a purpose, and that's to make the world a better place. And what you're advocating for absolutely is the right thing to do. It makes this country the special country that it is. And our last person is Barbara Ollinger from Folsom. She's from Louisiana, not in my district, but she wrote urging Congress to act on Social Security and related issues. Specifically, she was requesting that we as Congress reconsider the Social Security Fairness Act of 2009, which will repeal rules related to the government pension offset and the windfall elimination provision. She says this reduces her income during tough times. She wrote, quote, "Saddest of all is I am a retired social studies teacher, American history, civics. I am so distraught. We only ask for what is right and just. If I had not ever paid a dime, I would not be asking for a dime." Well, Ms. Barber, you're absolutely right. You paid in it. You should get it. You shouldn't be penalized. I'm not too big, too arrogant enough to say sometimes government gets it wrong, and government has it dead wrong on this issue, and it's something that we should address. So I want to thank those people for writing in, and now I just want to turn to a second to something that is absolutely the climax of foolishness. See, I have a shipyard in my district called Avondale Shipyard. Used to be Northrop Grumman. Then Northrop Grumman spent it off, got a $1.5 billion credit for the asset, and they spent it off to a new company that they made, Huntington Ingalls Shipyard. Well, Huntington Ingalls, in just the first quarter of this year, made $45 million. But they've decided that they're going to close that shipyard in my district. Now, that's almost 5,000 workers, direct workers that work for Huntington Ingalls, 6,000 indirect jobs. Well, it's every American's right, it's every American company's right to decide when they want to close a business. They can decide it's just not profitable. They can decide that the heat in Louisiana and the humidity and the mosquitoes are too much for them, that they can quit, that they're going to shut their plant down. That is their right. And that's what we fight for in this country, to give people the right to do what they want to do. Doesn't mean I have to like it. But government should not be a co-conspirator in that company's quitting on the American people. So what I have here today, I have all of these petitions, and they're not signed by the workers. It would have been far too easy to come in here with a big box of 5,000 signatures from people who depend on Northrop Grumman or Huntington Ingalls for a paycheck. This is from businesses in the community that are saying that it's just not right for Huntington Ingalls to just abandon the community. Now, here's the part that rises to the level of the climax of foolishness. Now that Huntington Ingalls has decided to close, they have applied for the federal government to reimburse them the cost of closing, giving Huntington Ingalls $310 million to pay for their cost of ramping down and laying off almost 5,000 people. Now, to me, that just doesn't make good sense. Now, we can take that $310 million, we can put it in an economic development fund for any other business that wants to come along and create thousands of jobs. We can put it in education for those 5,000 employees so that they can be competitive in another occupation. We can take that $310 million and pay down the debt. We can take that $300 million and do a number of things, but I would submit to you that we don't take that $310 million and reward a company for closing. Now, I offered that amendment on a bill just a few days ago, and some of my colleagues, some of my Republican colleagues supported the idea that we should not reward a company for quitting on 5,000 employees. And my Democratic colleagues overwhelmingly supported the same amendment. I would just tell you that in these tough economic times, that it is unconscionable to reward a company for quitting. Now, for those people who voted against that amendment, I would hate to have to go back to Montana, Minnesota, somewhere and say, not only did I have an opportunity to take $310 million and give it to paying down the debt or doing something productive with it or even doing something in my district, I decided to give $310 million to a company that is going to make $180 million this year. And why are we giving them $310 million? Because they're closing. They're still, I'll start to wrap up, Mr. Speaker, they're still going to own the property. They're still going to have the asset. They won't have the employees. Mr. Speaker, in closing, I just wanted to quickly touch on one thing, and that is, on the last District Work Week, I had the opportunity to go to the Second Harvest Food Bank of Greater New Orleans. And they are leading the fight in eradicating hunger. So last year, they served 262,800 people, including 82,000 children, 40,000 seniors. I just want, thank you, Mr. Speaker, I just want everyone to know that the problem of hunger, homelessness, and all of those things in our community is real. So as we cut, we need to remember to invest. And again, I look forward to continuing this conversation on the next People's House, and you can email us at myidea@ccpc.org. mail.house.gov.
The gentleman from,
And I yield back.
gentleman is recognized for a motion.